I'm Chris Boyd, host of Think. On July 4th, 2025, devastating floodwaters ripped through the Texas Hill Country, killing more than 130 people. After the Flood, a new podcast from the Texas Newsroom and PBS's Frontline, has followed survivors over the last year and tries to find out why this happened and whether it could happen again. In this first episode, you'll hear what happened during those harrowing early morning hours of the flood, and you'll meet a father who just sent his daughter to Camp Mystic 2 weeks earlier.
On the morning of July 4th, 2025, an emergency dispatcher in the Texas Hill Country got a call.
Kerr County 911, what's the location of your emergency?
Here at Camp Mystic in Hunt, Texas. We need search and rescue.
Okay, what's going on?
We're missing as many as 20 to 40 people.
Hundreds of miles away in Houston, Matthew Childress was getting his day started.
Was ready for a non-work lazy Friday and was coming down and starting to check emails, have coffee, etc.
Matthew's 18-year-old daughter, Chloe, had left home to be a counselor that summer at Camp Mystic. The all-girls camp is one of over a dozen popular summer camps in Kerr County.
And probably about 30 minutes later, my wife came down and said that she was fielding texts from friends and family about flooding that was happening in the whole country and that we should be concerned.
Camp Mystic is right on the banks of the Guadalupe River, and on July 4th, 2025, hundreds of campers were on site. There had been a flash flood overnight, which isn't unusual in central Texas, but alarming images of the river surging over its banks started circulating around social media and the news. At home in Houston, Matthew's wife, Wendy, kept trying to text and call Chloe, but she didn't answer her phone. That wasn't necessarily cause for alarm. Camp Mystic did not allow campers or counselors to have phones, but Matthew and Wendy thought about just getting in their car and driving to Chloe.
So initially I was skeptical, thinking that yes, it may have flooded, but I'm sure everything is okay. And do we need to get in the car and actually drive for 5 hours? Just my fear is we would drive there and then we'd be driving back.
But the concerned text messages from friends and family members kept coming. And to Matthew, the urgency of the situation became clear.
So we quickly grabbed bags, threw basically overnight clothes, and also packed a small bag for my daughter just in case she might need to come home with us. Threw it all in the car, and shortly thereafter we were on the road.
Matthew aimed the car west on I-10. Along the way, Wendy tried reaching Chloe again. Still nothing. Then, after an hour on the road, the phone rang. On the line was a representative from Camp Mystic.
She called to let us know that she was calling all families that had children that were unaccounted for. And she let us know that she had just called all the campers' parents and that we were the final people to be called because we were the counselors' parents to let us know that Chloe was unaccounted for. Clearly, our anxiety went through the roof. I was definitely driving faster than I probably should have been driving on the freeway, and I believe it was raining off and on. My sweet wife was telling me to slow down and be careful along the way, but all I could do was get there as quickly as I could to try to contribute something to help and find the girls.
You're listening to After the Flood, a podcast from the Texas Newsroom and PBS's Frontline. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh. I'll be your host for this 5-episode series. My day job, though, is being a reporter at Houston Public Media, the local NPR station. I mostly cover city government. But this time last year, that changed dramatically.
Heartbreaking numbers coming out of Central Texas.
This has just been an unprecedented historical flooding event there.
Now the enormity of the disaster is nearly impossible to bear.
Starting on July 4th, 2025, floodwaters ripped through this part of the state, catching people by surprise. More than 130 people died, many of them children. The vast majority of those deaths, 119, happened in Kerr County. For people who lived through the disaster and those who lost friends and family, the devastation was unimaginable.
Everything is gone.
And that was just the beginning. I went to Kerr County to cover the flood. I spoke with residents and tourists. I visited places destroyed by the flooding and tried to make sense of it all for our listeners. And in the 12 months since, my colleagues and I have kept coming back. Throughout our reporting, we've met dozens of people kind enough to share their stories. They told us about that day, the early morning chaos as the waters rose.
I remember seeing them standing by that tree you're looking at. That was the last time I saw that fine young man with his family.
But mostly, their stories are about all that came afterwards. The shock, the long slog through recovery, the struggles they faced, are still facing today as they rebuild their lives. This podcast is about their stories, and about the questions they have, that we all have. Why did this happen? How could this happen with almost no warning? And could it happen again?
The argument is this unprecedented? Is this something that we've seen before? Well, the truth of the matter is it's kind of in between.
Before we continue, a quick note. This podcast will be tough to hear at times. These are extremely difficult stories, dealing with death and trauma. So please take care while listening. In this episode, we're going to cover what happened on July 4th. But before we get into that, you need to know a little about this part of the state. The Hill Country is what it sounds like. Rolling hills that stretch hundreds of miles west of San Antonio and Austin. Just outside those bustling central Texas cities, the Hill Country is almost all nature. Limestone cliffs and canyons, winding rivers and creeks, Texas live oak and bald cypress trees. No dense urban spaces in sight. The people follow the water, specifically the Guadalupe River, which starts here and runs all the way to the Gulf Coast. In Kerr County, the river flows west to east, with a roughly 15-mile stretch running through the small communities of Hunt, Ingram, and right through the city of Kerrville. Hunt and Ingram are tiny, with only a couple thousand residents between them. Half of Kerr County's total population, about 25,000 people, live in Kerrville. Throughout the early morning hours of July 4th, people up and down this stretch of the Guadalupe experienced devastating flooding, but not all at the exact same time. The flooding started in Hunt, which is home to many popular summer camps, including Camp Mystic, then surged down the river toward Kerrville. Between Hunt and Ingram sits the neighborhood of Bumblebee Hills. It's a community of about 30 single-family homes, which actually makes it one of the denser areas along the river. July 4th should have been a day-long party there last year. River tubing, backyard grills, fireworks. The day before, July 3rd, Miles Murayama was getting ready. He'd set up a bouncy house in his backyard in Bumblebee Hills for his grandkids.
3rd July was a beautiful evening. It was beautiful. Nice. Sunset was nice. Everything was real calm.
Up the hill, his neighbor, Ramiro Rodriguez, who everyone calls Ram, was planning a more low-key celebration.
Remember, I was trying to gather something where we can do, maybe make some hamburgers. I remember seeing my coworker at HEB, and he was like, we're going to have 7 inches of rain, so you better watch out. And then I was like, well, we need it.
It had been a really dry summer. Across the street from Ram's house, Lilia and Joe Herrera were taking it easy since Joe had been sick, an unexpected twist that derailed their plans. If not for that, their house would have been full.
Well, we had planned to have about maybe 10 people come in and visit us.
It was
for the 4th of July.
4th of July.
They were coming on the 3rd and help us get dinner, lunch and stuff ready. And more people coming on the 4th.
Yeah.
But on Tuesday, that week before, I had COVID, so I canceled the plans. Thank God I canceled the plans.
On the night of July 3rd, Joe sat by his front window and watched as a stream of headlights lit up the road along the Guadalupe River.
Cars, pulling trailers, RVs, and SUVs coming into town.
To Joe, it made sense. This wasn't just any Independence Day. This year, it fell on a Friday. Folks were coming to this slice of paradise to celebrate a 3-day holiday weekend.
It's going to be a busy 4th of July. My God, look at all this traffic.
Then it began to rain. What you're about to hear is what happened to Joe, Lilia, Miles, and Ram as the waters rose. Their homes are about 500 feet from the river's edge and form sort of a triangle. Ram's house sits up higher than the others on a small hill. Miles lives down the hill, and across the street are Lilia and Joe, who live closest to the riverbank. That night, as July 3rd became July 4th, Joe watched the headlights from the vacation weekend traffic.
I was up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I heard the rain coming. I heard it coming down hard.
It wasn't unusual for Joe to be up at 1 a.m. Not only was he fighting off COVID, but Joe also has Parkinson's, something he says can make it difficult to fall asleep.
I looked at my rain gauge. It was 10.5 inches, and that's 45 minutes. That's a lot of rain. Something's going on here.
Around this same time, across the street, Miles got out of bed.
I woke up at about 1 o'clock, and it was just storming, raining. Which we've been through it before.
It was coming down pretty hard, but at that point, Miles wasn't too concerned. Like many people in Kerr County, he knew rain was in the forecast overnight, but nothing Miles heard about the storm before going to bed gave him cause for alarm. And he didn't know the National Weather Service issued a flash flood warning for the area at 1:14 a.m. Miles was focused on his grandson, the one he'd set up the bouncy house for earlier. He woke up nervous about the loud weather, the rumbles of thunder, the downpour pummeling the roof.
So I stayed up with my grandson, I don't know, maybe about an hour, a little more. Then I got sleepy, and he got sleepy, so we went back to sleep.
And up the hill, Ram was awake too, along with his son.
It was real early, really, really early. I remember I think around 2, that's when the power went out.
Ram tried to fall back asleep, but his son was terrified of the dark, so he stayed up with him.
I could hear the thunder, I could hear the rain pouring, and then out of nowhere, I hear the dogs barking. I have 2 dogs. I can hear them just barking crazy.
Then he heard banging on the front door. When Ram opened it, he found a family who'd been staying at a vacation rental down the hill, a house right on the banks of the Guadalupe River.
They were just terrified and shooken up, and they're telling me that the neighborhood was getting flooded. And so I was like, what? And I looked down, and yeah, sure enough, the water was rising in the area.
He'd never seen anything like this. Around 3 a.m., Miles' wife got a call from Joe.
My neighbor across the street, Joe and Lily Herrera.
They needed help.
I woke up, got my flashlight, try to head to Joe's house. As I got to the front door, there was water leaking in my house. And when I opened up the door, the water came in. The water was right above my kneecap.
As water rushed in, Miles trudged outside, where he could barely comprehend what was happening. He says he was in awe, shocked to see the Guadalupe River at his house, which is normally about a football field away from the river's edge. In the beam of his flashlight, he saw water raging through his neighborhood. Across the street, Miles saw Lilia and Joe's house, closer to the river, starting to flood.
I tried to cut across to Joe's house, and I didn't make it too far, and the water got a hold of me and knocked me down. It took me to my backyard. And once I got to my backyard, I knew I had to get up and seek cover. So I got up, and I took off, and I seek shelter behind my house.
The river was surging. Joe and Lilia heard what they describe as 3 big waves, an immense amount of water crashing.
Terrible sight.
That's when Joe says, we got to get out of here.
Joe told his wife to climb up to the attic. Because of his Parkinson's, he didn't think he'd be able to follow her up.
He said, save yourself, don't save me. And that's when we heard Ram.
From his house on higher ground, Ram looked downhill and realized Joe and Lilia were in trouble. He went to help.
It was real fast. I couldn't even imagine what was going on through my head.
Ram tied a strap around Joe's waist and pulled Joe out of the water towards higher ground. Lilia held on too.
And then I remember walking up the hill. It was just a quick reaction, honestly. It was an impulsive moment,
Miles struggled through the water to join Ram, Joe, and Lilia. From Ram's house, they all watched as the Guadalupe continued to rise below them.
I couldn't believe that the river had crested this high, and the river was in our neighborhood.
Kerr County 911 was the location of your emergency.
At about 4:40 a.m., emergency calls from Bumblebee Hills residents started rolling into the county's dispatch center.
We're working on getting those that are affected by the flood rescued. We do have water rescue headed to Hunt and Ingram trying to help. Right now, the best thing that you can do is get as high of ground as possible on top of the roof of the house, vehicle, attic.
Okay, we'll do that.
The water continued rising.
It's up to my waist in the house.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. We are working on trying to get everybody to see y'all. We have water rescues.
And rising.
Subdivision, Bumblebee Hill subdivision. There is an elderly woman up on her roof. Her mother has...
We'll let them know. We've gotten multiple calls from people off of Bumblebee. We'll let them know.
Well, please hurry. She's elderly, and I don't know how much longer she can hang on. The water's getting closer to her on her roof.
On the morning of July 4th, 2025, up to 11 inches of water fell in just a few hours over the Texas Hill Country. In some areas, the Guadalupe River rose as much as 38 feet above its banks, a record high. This is After the Flood. Coming up after the break, we follow the floodwaters downriver, and we'll reconnect with Matthew and Wendy Childress. We'll be right back. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, and this is After the Flood, Episode 1, The Day Of. We just followed Joe, Lilia, Ram, and Miles as they escaped the rising water in their neighborhood, Bumblebee Hills. The water then headed downriver toward Kerrville. Especially vulnerable were riverside RV parks and campsites along the way, and there were a lot of them, including Blue Oak RV Park. Before the flood, Blue Oak looked like many of the small parks scattered across the hill country. Gravel roads wound between rows of campers and travel trailers. There were fire pits and folding chairs. Some campers had just arrived at Blue Oak for the long holiday weekend, but Jake Richards and his wife had been staying at the park at that point for about 3 months.
This turned into home really quickly, but yeah, it's beautiful out here.
Jake and his wife were 2 of the 28 campers staying at Blue Oak that day. All their RVs and travel trailers were lined up along the river's banks and set on a small island nestled midstream. Lorena Guillen and Bob Canales, the couple that owns the park, were up early the morning of July 4th and started wondering if all the rain would be dangerous for their campers. Lorena reached out to the sheriff's non-emergency line at 2:08 a.m., about an hour after the National Weather Service issued that flood alert, but before officials were giving residents clear directives.
Kerr County Sheriff's Office.
I'm here at the Blue Oak RV Park, and I have a few campers staying right next to the Guadalupe. How bad is it, the levels of the Guadalupe right now?
We don't have that information.
Okay, but is it flooding, or do you know anything about it? Because I need to see if I need to start evacuating.
No, I'm not even sure if it's flooding.
A call from someone in the park just 2.5 hours later at 4:30 a.m. paints a very different picture.
Kerr County 911 was the location of your emergency.
I don't know. I need rescue, I think. I'm at the Blue Oak RV Park. I have a man screaming for help, help, help us.
By then, Bob Canales was scrambling to start evacuations.
We jumped in and started knocking on doors to all the campers, tell them, hey, you got to get out. There's a tremendous flash flood warning and hazard coming.
Jake Richards was awake in his RV and heard the commotion.
It was mostly like screaming that their homes were being swept away and everything. So quickly, like, the water was up to the bottom level already, like starting to sweep the RVs away from the bottom level. So I woke my wife up as soon as I saw what was happening outside. We got out of our RV in about 2 minutes, I think, and the water was already kind of up to the wheels.
He grabbed a few shirts and a pair of shorts. His wife, Julia, a musician, grabbed her guitars. The couple had just enough time to get their car to higher ground. Then they could only watch as the rising water swallowed their RV, carrying it down the river, along with houses and cabins.
There was a thought there for a moment where it's like, okay, we'll save the homes and stuff that are up here, because nobody expected it to be as devastating as it was. And that hope lasted about 60 seconds.
As campers hurried uphill away from the rising waters, RV park owner Bob Canales waited in the opposite direction. He headed towards the park's small river island, where a family of 4 was stranded. Bob remembered the couple, their 2 young sons and family dog, checking in the previous evening, just hours earlier. Now, though, Bob saw the river raging around them as he struggled to get closer.
It was dark, only had a flashlight in one hand, and you're already knee-deep in water, and they were even deeper on the other side.
The father was clinging onto his young boys. Bob tried to convince him to throw him, the baby that was in his arms. He wouldn't.
And I understand why he didn't do it, because what if the baby didn't make it? Or what if I didn't get the baby? So instinctively, I stepped off the sidewalk and in an attempt to help him, but the water was too powerful.
The current swept Bob nearly 100 feet downstream before he grabbed hold of a retaining wall at the edge of the campground. He pulled himself up and staggered through the dark floodwaters, but the family was gone.
I remember seeing him standing by that tree you're looking at there with the lights on. And that was the last time I saw that fine young man with his family.
That young man was John Burgess of Liberty, Texas. He and his wife, Julia Anderson Burgess, and their 2 sons, ages 5 and 21 months, died that day. Despite some very close calls, the other campers at Blue Oak RV Park that morning survived. But at an RV park just across the road, a staggering 37 people were killed. Jake Richards counts himself lucky. More than anything, he remembers how fast it all happened. At one point, the Guadalupe was rising about 2 feet per minute.
The screaming for people who are losing their stuff turned into screaming for people who are fighting for their lives at that point. So you start to hear just like different screams, these like blood-curdling screams of families getting washed away from upstream, like kids and everything. And then it just stops. And that's the most haunting sound in the world, is that silence.
From 3 to 5 a.m., emergency calls poured into the county's dispatch center as the wall of water moved toward Kerrville.
Do you need police, fire, or EMS?
I need everything, sir. My house is so flooded.
The calls paint a grim picture. Hundreds of people trapped along the river, unable to get to higher ground.
We're up on the 2nd floor now. My house is underwater.
On the morning of July 4th, the sun rose on Kerr County at 6:40 a.m., and residents got the full picture of what the flood had done. At the Blue Oak RV Park, formerly grassy campsites were now unrecognizable. Trucks, cars, and RVs were wedged into brush, or nowhere to be seen. That view extended all along the Guadalupe River. Twisted trees, debris everywhere, toys and clothes strewn across the soggy ground. Upriver in Bumblebee Hills, Joe and Lilia Herrera took in the devastation around their home.
Wow.
Yeah. We came to the house and we're like, oh my God.
It's all the mud in here.
Stunk so
and
bad.
We looked across and the fence was gone, and across the river and all the trees. And
it was something you'll never forget.
Miles Murayama was there too, and noticed one of his neighbors and her family on the roof of their home. He's not sure, but it's likely she was the older woman who was the subject of that 911 call we heard earlier.
So once we made sure they were safe, we continued into the neighborhood back here.
In the daylight, he realized his cars were missing from the driveway. They had been swept down the street and onto a fence. Volunteer firefighters arrived from Harper, a town about 20 miles away, and they helped Miles evacuate some of his neighbors. Despite several white-knuckle situations, miraculously, no one in Bumblebee Hills was swept away. But now, they needed somewhere to go.
So the evacuation process was to take them to Ingram Elementary School. That's where everything was set up.
The school is about 10 minutes away from the neighborhood, and it would serve as a makeshift supply depot and reunification site for the next few days.
When they got out, we started talking, and everybody's mind is just racing, still like, whoa, we can't believe what just happened.
Early news of the missing and the dead began to spread, and Miles started asking a question he still asks himself.
Why 4th of July? wee hours of the morning. Why couldn't it be 4th of July during daylight where people would have a chance maybe?
After a Camp Mystic representative had called to tell them their daughter, Chloe, was missing, Matthew and Wendy Childress arrived in Kerr County sometime around 1 or 2 o'clock. They immediately headed to Ingram Elementary, the reunification site Miles Mariyama had visited earlier that morning.
During that whole time frame, I was still in denial that this was something that was actually real happening to us.
Matthew kept thinking about how strong his daughter was. She was an athlete. He called her the machine.
And I had every confidence that she had found a way to survive, and telling myself that she's hanging onto a tree, taking care of some campers somewhere, and she hasn't been found yet. And so all I could do was keep my hopes up as high as I could, that she was fine.
Matthew and Wendy waited for hours.
As that day progressed, more and more families would arrive into the gym, all folks waiting on news for when their children would arrive, and more information would seep out to our friends that were there that our daughter was unaccounted for. So God bless them. There were lots of, parents giving us, uncomfortable kind of hugs and, hopeful wishes that Chloe would be found.
He was tense, but still optimistic. Then, after 4 p.m., the first small group of campers arrived at the reunification site. Chloe wasn't with them.
And it really struck me hard in my gut, in my belly, of the horror and terror that may be laying ahead for us, that I may never see her again.
By the end of the day, Texas Governor Greg Abbott was in Kerr County.
We'd thank everybody for taking time to be here for us to update a nation that really wants to find out what's going on and the responses taking place here in Center Port of Texas.
By now, over 12 hours had passed since the height of the flooding, and officials didn't have much concrete information to share.
I want to tell you all that we will be working around the clock 24/7 until every person is found. What I can confirm at this point are about 24 fatalities. We're not going to be giving any names out at this time. We're still notifying next of kin.
The small towns of Kerr County were under a national spotlight. It was the top story for anyone who turned on the evening news on July 4th.
Heartbreaking numbers coming out of Central Texas.
Now the enormity of the disaster is nearly impossible to bear.
Residents were reeling as emergency responders took over the area. Homes destroyed, loved ones missing, and reporters were starting to ask questions.
Is Camp Mystic the only camp that's under this sort of duress?
What's the threshold to send out an alert to people to get out of their house?
Do you trust the National Weather Service? Listen, it's not a matter of trusting.
But for Matthew and Wendy Childress, there was only one question they cared about. Where was their daughter, Chloe?
All the parents slowly departed because they picked up their children, and all the folks that were left were the parents of the unaccounted for children. Through that evening, we probably laid down for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying to close our eyes, but I don't remember if I ever actually dozed off, but I remember staring at the ceiling, mostly because all I could think about was Chloe, but I also began to get so concerned that I was going to receive phone calls. Because receiving a phone call meant that bad news was happening.
Our story continues in episode 2 of After the Flood, which will be available on July 1st, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh. Coming up next time on After the Flood.
I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket, and I pulled it out, and I showed everyone that was sitting in front of me that it was a Kerrville number.
And we'll take our first step into the days after the flood, when responders were scrambling and questions were swirling.
County officials really spend all day trying to figure out what happened at Camp Mystic, which, is just kind of illustrative of the chaos of a disaster of this scale.
This episode was written by me, Sarah Gruno, Lucio Vasquez, and Rachel Osier-Lindley. Our editors were Rachel Osier-Lindley and Elizabeth McQueen. Anna Campbell is our executive producer, and Elizabeth McQueen is our producer. Our editors at Frontline are Aaron Texera and Mia Zucker-Candle. Our music is by Renee Chavez and APM, and our audio producers are Casey Cheek, Jake Perlman, and Matt Largy. Our multimedia editor is Deborah Cannon, and Michael Minasi is our multimedia producer. Our fact checker is Anna Alvarado, and our attorney is Thomas Leatherberry. Aaron Geisler oversees our marketing, and our cover was designed by Miley Carballo. Corey McLagan is the executive editor of the Texas Newsroom. Special thanks to Lauren McGahee. The Texas Newsroom is a collaboration among NPR and the public radio stations in the state, including Houston Public Media, KUT in Austin, Texas Public Radio in San Antonio, and KERA in North Texas. This project received editorial and financial support from Frontline's Local Journalism Initiative, which is funded by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation.